Hey, how's it going guys? It's Nate here. And Skyrim is a huge world, littered with tales to be told and characters to tell them. However, in a game so big, there's bound to be a few things that just don't add up. Characters that are hiding things, stories that feel like there are more to them than what we're told. Well, such curiosity breeds speculation. So in honor of that, today we'll be taking a look at 5 Skyrim theories. Starting off, the introduction to Skyrim is quite possibly one of the most memorable scenes in gaming. Arriving in the city of Helgen for execution, only to narrowly be saved from certain death by a horrifying dragon that would become your biggest nemesis. Unless you purchase the expansions. However, why did Alduin show up? What prompted him to attack this seemingly random town at such a key moment? The general consensus in the community is that perhaps he knew the Dragonborn would be there and wanted to take him out for himself. But there's no real evidence that backs that claim, and even then, why not just let the Empire take care of the Dragonborn and be done with the entire problem? Well, one theory suggests that perhaps Alduin's attack is a result of something more trivial. You see, as the game first begins and you're riding in that prison carriage, one of the prisoners with you and first characters you'll ever hear is a man named Lokir, who is a horse thief and is terrified about his impending fate. The other inmates with him essentially tell him to tough it out. However, he knows what's coming. As he comes to realize that he's about to be executed and can do nothing to save himself, he utters out a bit of a prayer to his gods in sheer desperation. Listen carefully.
Mara, Debella, Kinnereth, Akatosh, Divines, please help me.
Notice how he explicitly names Akatosh, a god that's often considered the father of all dragons, and Alduin even explicitly refers to himself as the firstborn of Akatosh. The theory implies that maybe Alduin's attack was in fact Akatosh's response to Lokir's prayer. Maybe he was truly listening. Or perhaps Lokir saying Akatosh's name somehow caught Alduin's attention. Unfortunately for the man, even if his prayers were answered, he attempted to flee as the cart stopped in the city, and was shot down by archers. Perhaps if he had more faith, things could have ended differently. Next, in Whiterun's Cloud District, which of course you don't visit, lying underneath the bridge to Dragon's Reach, lies a mysterious skeleton, just sort of floating in the water. It's extremely easy to miss, given its rather tucked away location. However, the players that have noticed these calcified remains are generally easy to write it off, as it could just be a funny joke or simply a developer enjoying themselves a little bit. There's no significance to these remains. Or is there? Moving all the way to Riften, in Maven Blackbriar's personal room in the Blackbriar Manor, you can find a letter addressed to her from someone named Kristoff. In the writings, the author apologizes to Maven for a disagreement the two had, and asks her to make amends. He informs her that he's staying in Whiterun, and for Maven to get back to him should she ever wish to rekindle the friendship. Well, if you head to Whiterun's Bannered Mare, you'll find a letter from Maven addressed to Kristoff on one of the tables. In it, Maven announces that she's forgiven Kristoff entirely over whatever dispute they were having, and asks that he return to Riften. She closes her letter by claiming she's sending someone out to escort him back, but wants him to meet this escort alone, and at nighttime. It sounds like a setup. Well, this theory argues that Kristoff was indeed killed by whoever Maven sent, and his body dumped in the small pond beneath Dragon's Bridge. Now, honestly, considering you never find an NPC named Kristoff, it's pretty obvious he was killed. Now the only question is, are those his remains? Third on our list, the quest In My Time of Need is supposed to be a major exercise of morality for the player, and involves a Redguard woman named Sadia living in Whiterun's Bannered Mare, who's being pursued by a handful of Redguard warriors from Hammerfell. These men claim that she sold their people out to the Thalmor, and wish to bring her back to her homeland to face justice. They want the Dragonborn to help them capture her. Sadia argues the exact opposite, claiming instead that these men are mere mercenaries hired by the Thalmor to assassinate her for speaking out against them. Both sides essentially argue that the other is in cahoots with the Thalmor. She asks that you kill the men pursuing her. Both sides offer compelling stories, but little evidence, and the players ultimately left to pick whichever side they feel the most comfortable with. But regardless of whether you sell Sadia out or kill the soldiers after her, you're never given a solid answer regarding who is telling the truth. You're just left to question yourself and whether or not your actions were right. Well, as some players speculate, Sadia may have been the one telling the truth. You see, if you choose to side with the Redguard warriors, you'll lead Sadia to a special location outside of Whiterun, where a man named Kamatu will ambush her and use a paralyze spell on the woman. He'll then ride off, promising to take her back to Hammerfell for a just trial. However, if you visit Whiterun's catacombs after this exchange, despite Kamatu promising not to harm her, you'll find Sadia's burial urn, implying that she's dead. Now at this point you may be thinking, well, wait a minute, Nate, this isn't a theory anymore. the warriors were obviously lying and killed her. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. You see, a look inside of Skyrim's creation kit reveals that Sadia, like every other character in Whiterun, has a script that sends them to the catacombs should they ever be removed from the game, killed or otherwise. It's entirely possible that after Sadia is handed over to Kamatu, her NPC is simply removed from the game, as there's no longer any real reason for her to be there, and Bethesda simply forgot to remove the script that causes her to spawn in the catacombs. So essentially at this point, the question is, did Bethesda do this on purpose? Decisions. Today's number 4 theory suggests that the Dragonborn may have actually been chosen by the dragons to serve and rule with them, rather than just murder them to death as you do. You see, in Skyrim, there are 8 Dragon Priest masks for the player to obtain, through killing 8 different Dragon Priests. Each Dragon Priest shares a name with his mask. This is important. In the ancient times, the Dragon Priests helped the dragons rule by governing in their names. You see, while the dragons were by far the most powerful beings around town, they weren't exactly concerned with modern-day governing affairs, so they delegated that to their loyal Dragon Priests. However, by the time of the events of Skyrim, their souls were lost, and they're merely a bunch of over-glorified Draugr. Well, after you've killed the 8 Dragon Priests, or at least their carcasses, and recovered their masks, you can venture to the Labyrinthian. Here you can place each of the masks you've obtained on a shrine, in exchange for a new mask that'll be dispensed by that same shrine. This mask is named Connerik, or Warlord in Dragon Tongue. It looks very different from all of the others. It boasts great tusks, and it's the only one you obtain without killing a Dragon Priest. This theory puts forth the idea that Connerik never had an owner, and it was in fact you, the Dragonborn, who was supposed to become him. You were supposed to become a Dragon Priest to serve the dragons and rule in their name. Or at least, that was their plan. You see, dragons have a great appreciation for power more than anything else really. Might equals right. And it's possible that they believed if there was a man capable of defeating their various priests and mounting their masks on the shrine, that person would deserve a chance to help them rule. Clearly, whoever this person was would have to be one of the most powerful individuals in the world, so they had this nice mask made for them to welcome them to the club. It wasn't until thousands of years later that all of their priest masks were finally collected and their priests defeated. And ironically enough, it just so happens that the first mortal capable of accomplishing this feat was the man that most sought the destruction of the dragons, and he would be given their most beloved mask. So, obviously these dragons didn't really think the whole thing through if this theory holds up. And finally, last on our list, what if the player is a more powerful being than just the Dragonborn? I know, just. One theory suggests that the Dragonborn is not only the savior of the world, but an actual mortal incarnation of the god who created it. In the game's lore, there's a god named Lorkhan, who's essentially responsible for the creation of Nirn, the world the Elder Scrolls takes place on. The Nords call this god Shor, and the theory goes that you, the Dragonborn, are actually an avatar of him. Now, you're not the first time that Shor has taken on a mortal form. In fact, he does this so often that there's even a name for people that are mortal incarnations of him. They're called Shazarines. Talos was one, the first High King of Skyrim, Ysmir was another. It's actually a fairly common phenomenon. The most evidence behind the possibility that you are one too rests primarily in the Sovngarde and Dragonslayer quests, where the player visits Sovngarde, and more specifically, the Hall of Valor. The Hall of Valor is also known as Shor's Hall, and as you probably know, it's inhabited mainly by the spirits of courageous fallen Nordic heroes, as well as Shor himself. At least, it's supposed to. When you visit Shor's Hall, Shor himself will be noticeably absent. Some Nordic spirits will remark that he should be there, but no one really knows where he is. Well, the theory implies that the reason you can't find him anywhere is because you actually are him. Shor decided to take up a mortal avatar and use that to defeat Alduin. Adding some weight to this theory is the fact that the player is allowed to sit upon Shor's throne in the Hall of Valor. Generally, the Dragonborn is unable to sit upon the thrones of most gods who aren't them. However, since you are technically part of Shor, you're allowed to use his chair. That said, this rule hasn't exactly been consistently maintained by Bethesda throughout Skyrim, so I wouldn't call it definitive proof. If you're interested in learning more about the theory, I'll link in the description down below a video by Roshank Redemption. I highly encourage you to watch it, because there's a lot more evidence behind this, and the theory is considerably more complex than I've explained so far, and he does an excellent job at breaking it down. But with that last one, we're going to wrap up. Thanks for stopping by, everyone. Which of these theories was your favorite? Do you think all of them are possible? Do you think none of them are possible? Which of these do you think you can debunk? I'm sure I don't need to tell you. Leave a comment down below. If all goes well, this video should be live on New Year's Day 2009. 2018. So hopefully you didn't hear any fireworks or firecrackers in the background. I've been doing my best to time this video appropriately, but something might have slipped by. Anyway, thanks for stopping by, and hope to catch you all in my next video. Peace out, everyone.